and I was one of those people. I lost 85 pounds in less than 3 months when I was a teenager. The mechanics are not as important as people make them out to be. And in this industry, you have people just competing for market share, and I'm one of them. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I sell products on training and diet. So, you know, you just, there's a big market share war for who has the best method. And, you know, anytime you're married to a single method, it's never good. And that 80%, you know, I feel I'm one of the only people in the industry that really addresses the fact that 80% is way more important than the 20. So I've seen a lot of guys that had a quote-unquote shitty program out of, you know, muscle and fitness or something like that, but just did it. You know, they just did that program and stuck with it and made great results, made great progress. But, you know, to your point, those are the people that kind of instinctively or intuitively, you know, added weight and sought progression. Right, so that's kind of an important distinction. Is that I completely agree with what you're saying. If that's not built into it, and this person doesn't have that intuitive, you know, drive to do that on their own, then ultimately it is a shit program. Right, but I mean, you'd be amazed at what people can do with very poor programs. I mean, you can have people. I mean, I'd be a fool if I said that every person that bought the Grayskull LP, because there's been a lot of them over the years. Every person that bought that book was now a jacked beast.
Right.
And I'd be an absolute fool to say that. I mean, most of the people, again, in marketing, we say a lot of the people who bought that book, it's collecting dust on a shelf, or they haven't even taken the shrink wrap off of it.
Yep.
Right. So I'm not delusional in thinking that anyone who purchases one of my products is automatically going to be awesome. Mm-hmm. Right. By the same token, someone who purchases something that's what I consider to be inferior, or anyone that would, you know, analyze the programs would say is inferior, might have made infinitely better progress.
True.
Right, doing something lesser, you know, but it's all about how they approached it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely an important point, and I look forward to that article, by the way.
Cool. Yeah, I'm excited.
That's the one principle, like I say, is always wanting more, always seeking more.
Yep.
Which your training. The other two that are there that are big on the diet front, if you want to grow, you need calories and you need protein. You know, what I don't believe in is making that more complex than it needs to be. For example, I have one of my guys that I'm working with now who works with me in a lot of areas of my business, kind of taking him under my wing. So a 19-year-old kid. He started working with me. He was 180 pounds, and he's now 230, and that was inside of about 4 months. He had no appreciable amount of body fat to speak of. And he comes into my office the other day. We're doing some work, and he tells me he wants to go to 250. So basically, I was like, all right, well, it's going to be really easy to go to 250. And I mean, here's a guy who's trained his ass off. Obviously, his strength has increased quite a bit to make that 50-pound increase that he's made. But, his diet is good, but not great. He's 19 years old. Eats, kind of haphazardly, but he has a couple of principles that are in place. He makes sure he gets protein. Now, he's taking a couple of protein shakes. I think he does like 3 a day, and so they're in place. So now it's just a matter of he has the right mindset and the right habits when it comes to training. Same with his diet, right? It's what you do most of the time that matters, not some of the time. So he's doing it right. Now to take him another 20 pounds, literally the only change that I made with this guy is I had him add 2 tablespoons of olive oil to each of his protein shakes. Right? So olive oil, you're looking at about 120 calories per tablespoon.
Yep.
Gives it about 240. So we'll round that to 250 and say that over the course of 3 shakes, he's now getting 750 calories more per day. Right? So everything else can stay the same if we do that. If we add it to a 3rd tablespoon, which is what we usually do once we get accustomed to taking the oil, well, now he's up to, considerably more per day, over 1,000 calories a day in added calories. And I like to tell people you have to look at the macro sense, not the micro sense, meaning not macronutrient, but you have to look at, what's your caloric intake over the course of the week and the month, as opposed to any given day.
Right.
Because ultimately that's what matters.
Yeah, and you're going to have those days, and sometimes life happens. But if you can get it going in the macro, then you're going to be fine.
That's why I don't really believe in or promote scheduled deloads. That's why I'm not a proponent, or I don't want to talk about intermittent fasting. Because I say, I do deloads and intermittent fasting all the time. It's called life.
Yeah.
If I'm with 3 kids, if I'm in the emergency room for 6 hours and don't eat, and then, or I'm involved in some kind of business activity, and my whole day is working with clients and traveling or this or that. No, my diet's not going to be on point that day. You know, so guess what? I'm intermittent fasting that day. You know, and if by the same token, I get sick or, you know, I just don't have it mentally to train a given week because I'm more focused on something else, well, there's my deload week. Mm-hmm. You know, so I don't feel that you need to write those things into programs. And anytime people capitalize and make money on, you know, deliberately planning that kind of stuff, that falls into what I call proprietary complexity. It's the idea that, you know, the more complicated something is, the more money it should cost, or the more valuable it is.
Absolutely.
And I always joke with my clients because, you know, everything I do is very, very simple, and it builds on simple principles. So it's kind of like the more money someone pays me, the simpler and simpler their methods get. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's kind of funny because they're usually coming from a world of kind of overwhelm in terms of knowledge and ideas. And next thing you know, they're doing the simplest thing in the world, but they're like, "Holy shit, this is amazing! This works so well." And I'm like, "Oh, imagine that, the basics." You know?
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and I hear that, and I think that's reflected in a lot of programs and definitely products out there that
Sure.
there'll be. I've seen, you know, warnings on your basic bodybuilding program in one of these magazines. And I mean, it's not for bodybuilders. It's for like skinny dudes reading Men's Health, and it's right next to the article on 40 ways to make her look at you differently. Like it's not for people who are like really super deep into weightlifting, but they always stress, you know, make sure you rest today and make sure you're resting 45 seconds only in between sets. The basics work surprisingly well. And if you can master those, you know, there was actually a quote on your site in one of your articles that said, an expert is a master of the basics, which I think is a very poignant, true statement for anything.
When I talk to people that, you know, I do interview or sit down with people that are financial geniuses, you know, it's the same logic. You know, everyone wants to. It's like with the stock market, for example. You know, and I work with a lot of Series 7 guys, a lot of stockbrokers. I work with them on persuasion and influence, obviously because they're salespeople. But you know, a lot of people are what I call emotional traders. They're speculators. They're gamblers. So you have a guy who has maybe $3,000 set aside. He wants to invest in the stock market, and he's picking stocks. Yep. You know, he's picking this stock and doing this. And you're not going to win that game. You know, you're not going to beat the market. Now, you know, more fortunes have been made with individual stocks than with something as bland as, say, a Vanguard 500 index fund, which is, you know, in my opinion and opinion of a lot of guys, whether we're talking about Tony Robbins, whether we're talking about Jack Bogle, who started Vanguard, whether we're talking about Jim Cramer from Mad Money on CNBC, these people, like, the heavy hitters have a strong belief in having a layer, again, that idea of layering, of money that's invested in something like an index that's just matching the market and making you money a lot more predictably and consistently. So, you know, my advice, it's not anything I've created, I'm just kind of echoing people that I've learned from, is someone's trying to invest in the stock market, you know, get $10,000 in the S&P 500 index before you start picking a single stock.
Exactly.
You know, it plays back into that same idea of basics.
Yeah.
You know?
In The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham, they make the same point.
Yes.
They say, okay, hey, if you're going to dedicate, you know, 30 hours a week to researching and, you know, reading earnings statements and projections, cool. You go ahead and pick your own stocks. But if you're the average guy, you know, picking stocks is an index fund is always going to beat a novice picking stocks, or, you know, the next hot thing. It's basics.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Like I said, I mean, you have to have your base. If you have a base in place and you have some risk capital, then you have some stuff.
Go ahead.
Casino. If you go to the casino and clean out your bank account and put it all on black or something like that, you know, I mean, that's a foolish thing to do. Yeah. You probably have a problem. You should just call some kind of gambling hotline or something. But you know, it's me. I enjoy gambling. I don't do it compulsively by any stretch. But you know, if I go to the casino, I might take $1,000 or something and say, this is what I'm going in with, and if I lose it all, great.
Yep.
You know, no skin off my back. I've accepted the risk.
Yep.
But if I go in and I play some blackjack and walk out with $2,500 or $3,000, well, guess what? You know, I did well. And anytime you're picking stocks, you're speculating. Period.
Exactly.
You know, if you are, I mean, unless you're Gordon Gay, unless you have the inside information, but that's why it's illegal.
Right.
It's illegal to do that.
Yeah.
So I mean, you have to you mentioned Benjamin Graham. Intelligent Investor is one of my favorite books.
It's a phenomenal book.
I did a podcast called The Intelligence Investor, talking about investing in your own knowledge paying the highest dividend. But Graham, as I'm sure you're aware, was Warren Buffett's mentor.
Yep.
I think we can all agree Warren Buffett's been marginally successful in investing.
I'd say he knows what he's talking about, yeah.
He's doing all right for himself. But that's the point I make, too, is that Buffett will tell you, too, he's been right less than half of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He's the richest man in the world, and arguably the best investor in history, and he's still wrong more than half the time. Well, when you're playing with billions of dollars and you're going to lose a few $100 million, it's not the end of the world. But a guy who's got, has saved up $10,000, for him to lose 12 and go in the hole, well, that's a night and day difference.
Yeah.
So it's all about what you're willing to risk. It's Warren Buffett. I mean, he's got over 90% of his personal net worth that's being left to his children, the proportion that's being left to his children and his family is in the S&P.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because it's there. It's in the basics. Always the basics. I don't care what the topic is. Like you said, that quote is, an expert is simply that, a master of the basics.
Yep.
Someone who understands, has a comprehensive knowledge, and habitually applies basic principles of success better than someone else.
Yep.
That's it. And a good teacher of anything instills that in his clients and students. I instill the importance of the basics, working the basics, the fundamentals, until they're absolutely second nature to do.
Yep.
And once you can do that, then then you can experiment a little bit. But anytime you're experimenting or venturing out, that's when you're risking. And the most successful people understand that.
Yep. Absolutely. Back to your the physical side of your website a little bit.
Sure.
The villain challenges. This is something that I'm a real big fan of. If you get a chance to check it out, I'll put a link to it on my website. But it's basically, I believe there are 10 total.
No, there were 5.
There were 5. Oh my God. Okay. Well, 5 is enough for the world because they're difficult. It's basically 5 really difficult physical challenges. I want to know if you've ever thought about if you're going to bring in some extra challenges, and if anyone has completed every challenge like in a relatively close time frame, because a lot of them are very disparate. There's one that's about a ruck. There's one that's about push-ups. There's one with weighted pull-ups, a la the Spetsnaz. Any chance you're going to be bringing some more challenges in?
Definitely. It's with the challenges, they were ones that I released at the beginning of Strength Zone. And on the note of if people done them in relatively close succession, I'll point out that all of those challenges were kind of benchmarks of Grayskull.
Nice.
Like the old Grayskull, when Grayskull was really, when it was just kind of this cult training area, whatever you call it. The first one, that's why Zone Challenge 1 was the 100 burpees in 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that when I had CrossFit Grayskull, I was one of the first East Coast CrossFit affiliates back in the day. That was a standard. I mean, you had to get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And, I had people that came in, I had women that came in obese that were doing Zone Challenge 1 in less than a year. And obviously they weren't obese by the time they completed it, right? But the point was that all of those challenges were benchmarks here. So,
nice.
In answer to the question, at one point there was quite a few people that were capable of essentially, 5 days. If we took 5 days and had them do all 5, they would knock it out with no problem. Nice. Now, I think that a lot of that obviously has to do with environment. I talk about the 80%. Again, there was just different standards. There were different things. It's like I always say, if you go to Westside Barbell, if you went and trained at Westside Barbell, I don't care where you're at in your training, you're going to get a lot stronger, a lot faster.
Yeah.
If you're the smartest guy in your group, get a new group. If you're the strongest guy in your gym, get a new gym. So the environment and the standards of the people you're around affects you more than anything else. So I think that a lot of people who've read the villain challenges and maybe even see them as kind of unattainable, or that they're too far off currently to be able to really do them or do them in any kind of impressive amount of time. There's just been a lot of people that have done them. Now, one thing I'm looking for is I want to find someone that's just a reader, someone who is not from Grayskull, that will knock out all 5 and put them on video. I want to see that. I do. Not because I'm saying it can't be done. I want it to be done.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I put these challenges out. Because when people, excuse me, when people accomplish these challenges, you know, they've done something significant. It's like my post that I wrote a little while ago. Ever seen a fat guy run a 5-minute mile? You know, we avoid the things that we don't like to do, and to our detriment. So, you know, it's if someone can knock out all 5 of those challenges, they're an absolute animal. And I want to see that. I hope to see that. Because that much has never taken place. I've never seen someone that did not physically train here do all 5. I'm sure there are people that have, without a doubt. I'm sure there's plenty of people that have, but I've never seen someone prove to me that they have. All
right. Well, you heard them, everybody. I mean, I'll put those challenges on my site, and hey, you can get started today. I think I have 2 of them. I have the push-ups, and I'm pretty sure I've done the ruck. I didn't do it specifically for the villain challenge. But I mean, I still got some work to do to hit all 5 of those. So if you're out there and you want something challenging, check out the villain challenges. They're pretty gnarly.
One thing I want to point out with the challenges is Randy Gage, who's a great writer and great speaker. He's a guy I've learned a lot from over the years. Randy Gage talks about the greater the distance between where you currently are and where you want to be, the more potential for progress you have. So like someone in your case, where you say you have 2 of them, right? The idea that you have 3 to go is excellent, because the adaptations that are necessary for you to get the other 3, for you to do those things, when you've accomplished those challenges, like I say, there's no gaps in your performance then. I mean, you are just an absolute beast at that point. So that's why I think it's so important to go into that. Whether it's those challenges, which I think are obviously excellent challenges, so I put them out, but you know, whatever it is, I mean, if you set a goal like that 5-minute mile for the fat guy, if he does a 5-minute mile, he's not going to be a fat guy anymore.
Yeah.
You know, no questions. So that's good. If you're far away from knocking out one of the challenges, that's excellent. You got a lot of room to improve. What gets trickier is once you can do all 5. Right? Because once you can do all 5, it's like, all right, well, progressing from this point out is going to be a little bit more difficult. If you're a 900-pound deadlifter, you know, you got Andy Bolton and these guys who pull over 1,000. But that jump from 900 to 1,000, you know, that's a little bit trickier than the jump from 300 to 400. Yeah. You know, and it requires a lot more complexity, a lot more mental work, and a lot more pharmaceuticals. So,
well, like as you said earlier, it's still linear, but it's got zigzags in it.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good to hear that there might be some more on the way, and hitting all 5 of those is definitely a huge accomplishment.
I mean, you never know. I mean, I have a lot of irons in the fire right now, but I always have stuff swirling around in my head, so you might see a couple new villain challenges pop up in the near future. Cool. Okay, I'll look for it.
Top 3 man movies, and by that I don't mean, you know, the Expendables, where it's just gratuitous violence and, you know, stupid rah. I mean like movies that you think help explain how to be a man. So my picks, and I was in a bar in Indiana, 3 Floyd's Brewery. It's actually the best brewery I've ever been to in my life, and I've gone to a lot of these. So check it out if you're ever in Munster, Indiana. But I was in a bar, 3 Floyd's, and my friend asked me this question, and I came up with Heat, with Al Pacino, Robert De Niro. No Country for... I freaking love that movie. It's like one of my favorite movies of all time. No Country for Old Men and The Dark Knight. And it's kind of funny because people ask me, you know, why did I decide to write my book and come up with my website. And one of the moments of inspiration I had, although it sounds like I'm like a 12-year-old kid geeking out at the movie theater, when I watched The Dark Knight, the Joker said at one point, if you're good at something, never do it for free. And at that point, I'd been providing free workouts, free supplementation, advice, free nutrition to everybody who was interested enough to ask. And I said, hey, you know what? Like, this is actually really valuable information. Let me put some products together, because I should be, you know, I'm good at this. So
absolutely.
JP, I'd like to get your take on your top 3 man movies.
Well, this is a tough question because I am a movie buff. I love movies, and there's been so many that have influenced me in one way or the next. And something as simple as, like you said, The Dark Knight, which you wouldn't think of as like an inspirational movie per se, right?
Yeah.
But have those little moments where something clicks and it alters the course. And that's why I love movies. You know, I really do. My top 3 movies, though, I'd have to say my number 1 is Wolf of Wall Street. It's without a doubt my favorite movie.
Okay.
I watch it. Should have had it on this morning when I was getting ready to come into work. I love the movie. It's definitely a powerful film. Goodfellas is another movie that I've seen countless times.
Nice.
You know, I can recite it, and you know, I love that. Of course, my upbringing was really different than most. I had a little bit more insight into that kind of they had a huge impact on me, and then what being a man was to me. Godfather 2, the same thing. You know, Godfather 2 is right up there. It's one of my favorites. For the same reasons. You know, you have young Vito, you know, back and forth again, there's Pacino again, but you have Al Pacino, of course, is Michael Corleone, and then you see Vito and his rise to power and his ascension and, you know, the decisions he made. So that movie's impacted me quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, same thing. Anytime you have a rapid rise to power, you know, the underdog coming up, the hero's journey or anti-hero's journey. You know, I have a big tattoo on my right forearm that I got when I was 18 of the box cover of Scarface with Pacino on it. So, you know, that Scarface, of course, is a huge one for me. And then, of course, I mentioned Wall Street earlier with Gordon Gekko. I mean, it's another one. So, like I said, I mean, I could go on literally.
Yeah. I think you're at 4 now.
Yeah, probably 4 or 5 at least. But yeah, three's difficult, man. To narrow it down.
Yeah.
That's, you know, if I ever did a list, it would have to be in no particular order list. You know, there's no way I could rank them.
It took me a minute. I got to 2 pretty quick, and then like a beer and a half later, I came up with Dark Knight.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I love those. I love the Michael Bay Batmans. I mean, I told you before, I was Bane for Halloween a few years ago and spent a whole bunch of money to get spent like $500 getting the Bane coat with the leather and the big collar, custom made for me in England, you know, to wear for one night. You know, it's a mess, but so I love those movies. Yeah, like I said, anything that illustrates a hustle, you know, a person that's just sees where they're at in their circumstances and seeks to change that.
Exactly.
You know, by whatever means. And of course, you know, we're talking movies and dramas, so sometimes, you know, they make moral decisions that others wouldn't or whatever, but the idea of ascending and changing your circumstances, you know, The Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith is a much softer movie than a lot of the ones that I described, but it's still one of my favorites.
Right.
You know? Movies like that and Good Will Hunting that aren't like violent, you know, gangster movies or anything like that per se, but they still embody that same ideal.
Exactly, and like that's one reason why personally I like a lot of documentaries. Like you know, the movies I mentioned, you know, are like you said, like kind of tough and rough and tumble type deals. But like Man on Wire, it's about this French guy. He strings up a tight wire between the World Trade Center and walks across it. And I mean, that's all about a guy fulfilling his dream. And he's a little bit kooky. He's a little bit French, you know. But I mean, easily one of the most inspirational movies I've ever seen. And it's not tough at all. But it's just like you said, it's the hustle, you know. And that's
That's what it's about.
It's really powerful.
You know, I've shared with you before. That's why I respect you, I admire you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
You know, putting content out and coming out with this book and just you know, going for it. You know, that's what people do not do.
Yeah.
You know, people just, everyone has an idea. Everyone has, you know, ideas every single day that could make them wealthy, that could, you know, better their circumstances in some way or the next. The difference between someone who's successful and someone who isn't is that 50 years from now, the successful person isn't sitting asshole was making all this money. That was my idea. He's not doing that. You know, I mean, I've failed miserably at so many things that I've attempted because I've just, you know, one of my best friends, Joe, he would always say to people about me, you know, the thing about Johnny Payne is he'll read a book on open heart surgery and try it tomorrow. You know, and it was kind of, you know, it was always a joke, like he would, you know, say that to people. And I was kind of the surgeon in my little circle of friends at that point, so I was always giving somebody stitches or something because they couldn't go to a hospital. But the underlying theme there was just that I've never been of the mentality that there's something I cannot do. And if I don't know how to do it, if you ask me a question, I don't know the answer, I'll tell you I don't know the answer, but tomorrow I will have read 2 books on the subject. Yeah. You know, by tomorrow.
Yeah.
And you know, bridge that gap in my understanding of something.
That's awesome. And a huge part is you know, admitting and being able to, number one, it's having curiosity, and number 2, it's admitting, hey, you know, I don't know. Like, you know, maybe I kind of suck in this topic, or I don't have that knowledge. But if you rent that book from the library the next day, or you're sitting on the floor reading that book because you want to know, I mean, it's amazing. People don't do that. So if you can keep your curiosity alive,
it really does.
Yeah, if you just keep that curiosity alive and you go out and actually try to get answers to the things that you're interested in, or maybe, you know, try that idea, like you said.
Sure.
You know, you can be really amazed with the results.
Yeah, I mean, Les Brown says it best. He says, you know, you got to fail your way to success, and that's absolutely true. Like, you learn infinitely more from failing than you do from succeeding. Mm-hmm. And you know, thank God I've had the failures I've had. I mean, there's so many cliched bits of motivation out there about this subject, but you know, if you're the greatest hitters in baseball, the Hall of Fame hitter, if you bat 300, you're going to the Hall of Fame. I mean, that's 70% of the time you struck out.
Yeah.
You know, so 30% of the time, you know, you won. With a financial decision, you know, or business, or I should say not really finance, it's a little bit different, but with a business, as an entrepreneur, you know, Warren Buffett says it the same way. I mean, other people have said the very same thing. You know, with Buffett's logic, you get 3 strikes in baseball. You know, the cool thing of being an entrepreneur is you can stand up there at the plate. You don't have to swing at everything. Mm-hmm. If you got 2 strikes, you got to swing at anything that comes across the plate. In business entrepreneurship, you don't. You just stand there and keep taking pitches. If you're building up your dry powder and pooling your resources and getting your knowledge and know-how behind you, then when you get that perfect pitch, you smash the fucker out of the park. You only have to be right once.
Yep.
You know? So, yep. But that, again, is one of those things, universally. All 5 of those headings, it applies.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, hey, JP, I want to thank you again for, you know, talking with me today. Everybody out there listening, strengthvillain.com. There's some amazing...
JohnnyPayneLive.com now.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, JohnnyPayneLive.com. But, you know, I'm old school, and I typed in Strength Villain today, and it took me right there.
Get you there.
Yeah, it took me right there anyway, so hey. His book, I mean, he's got a ton of them, but Gray Skull Linear Progression is the one that we talked about, the methods here today. Villain Challenges will be up on my site, and you know, like I said at the start, total badassery is the goal, and Johnny Payne covers those areas with the mental, the physical, and the financial. So, you know, I'm really happy to have him here today. And you should definitely check out his site, check out his products, and read up, because, you know, knowledge is power.
Well, Colin, I greatly appreciate you having me on here. And to anyone listening, definitely you want to keep tabs on Colin here. He's doing some great things. Like I said, I admire him tremendously. And he is a ambitious, go-getter individual. And I think we're going to see a lot more from Colin in the years to come. So definitely, again, you know, thank you to your listeners, Colin, and you know, I look forward to doing this again with you.
My pleasure, me too. So that'll be it, everybody. Thank you for listening, and you know, keep your eyes on my site and on JP's for new stuff coming out. Thanks a lot.